Before Zeus ruled Olympus, before the Titans, before the gods themselves, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon were entirely consumed by Kronos. This is the story of Zeus and Olympus, born from the absolute, unyielding terror of a cannibalistic regime. We are accustomed to viewing Zeus as an absolute institution. We see him in marble, an unyielding patriarch seated upon a golden throne at the apex of Mount Olympus, holding the master lightning bolt like a scepter of eternal right. We are taught that he is the rightful king of gods and men, but authority is a historical narrative written by the victors. In the ancient world, power was never granted by divine right. It was carved out through systemic violence, cold-blooded betrayal, and a brutal cosmic coup. Zeus was not born into luxury, nor was he destined for peace. He was born a fugitive, marked for termination by his own father. To understand the psychological architecture of the king of Olympus, we cannot simply look at his victories. We must look at the dark, paranoid bloodline that spawned him, the desperate psychological isolation of his childhood, and the terrifying, multi-generational cycle of trauma that he had to weaponize just to survive. This is the first chapter in our massive two-part documentary series tracking the bloodiest civil war in myth. If you are fascinated by the darker, unpolished layers of ancient history and deep character studies, hit the subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. We are stripping away the modern fairy tales to reveal the cold, mechanical reality of the gods. Drop a comment below, letting me know who you think is the ultimate villain of the Greek pantheon, and let's find out if your answer changes by the end of this 30-minute epic. This is not a story of righteous gods. It is a clinical breakdown of a cosmic revolution. To understand the rise of Zeus, we must first analyze the tyrant who preceded him, Kronos, the king of the Titans. Kronos himself was a usurper. He had risen to power by castrating his own father, Uranus, the primordial sky, punishing him for imprisoning his siblings in the depths of the earth. As Uranus fell, his severed blood contaminated the earth, and with his dying breath, he leveled a terrifying psychological curse upon his son. You too shall be overthrown by your own bloodline. The son you conceive will be the architect of your ruin. This prophecy became the organizing principle of Kronos' entire administration. Paranoia warped his mind into a prison. He didn't build fortresses or forge armies to protect his crown. He looked inward, identifying his own future children as his ultimate existential threats. When his sister wife, Rhea, gave birth to their first child, Hestia, Kronos did not see a daughter. He saw a rival. He snatched the newborn from Rhea's arms and swallowed her whole, imprisoning her within the dark, crushing cavern of his own stomach. For years, this horrific ritual repeated itself. Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, each one was torn from their mother's embrace and consumed alive. They did not die. They were immortal deities, condemned to grow to maturity inside the pitch-black, suffocating flesh of their father's torso. Kronos believed he had engineered the perfect prison. He had centralized all potential opposition inside his own anatomy. But tyranny always underestimates the psychological threshold of desperation. By the time Rhea was pregnant with her sixth child, her grief had hardened into absolute defiance. She realized that playing by the tyrant's rules would only guarantee the consumption of her entire lineage. She needed a deception so complete that it would exploit Kronos' supreme arrogance. When the time came to give birth, Rhea fled under the cover of a moonless night to the rugged, isolated island of Crete. There, in the deep subterranean dampness of a cave on Mount Ida, she gave birth to Zeus. But she could not bring the child back to the mainland. Instead, she took a large, heavy stone from the mountainside, wrapped it meticulously in soft baby blankets, and returned to the court of the Titan king. Kronos, blinded by his own sense of absolute security, did not even bother to unwrap the blankets. He did not look at the face of the child. He simply opened his massive jaw and swallowed the stone whole, believing he had successfully neutralized the final threat to his eternal throne. The Omphalos stone settled deep into his belly, acting as a physical monument to his own vulnerability. While Kronos sat on his throne, confident that his position was secure, the true catalyst of his destruction was growing in the shadows of Crete. The childhood of Zeus was not one of divine privilege, it was a masterclass in survival and hidden radicalization. He was an illegal child, an existential secret hidden from the eye of the state. To ensure his survival, a complex underground network of protectors was established. Zeus was raised by the nymph Melissa, who fed him honey to build his strength, and he was nursed by the divine goat Amalthea, whose milk provided him with the raw, vital essence of the cosmos. The cave on Mount Ida was a cold, torch-lit sanctuary, a space where the future king learned to walk, breathe, and plot in total isolation from the world he was meant to inherit.
The greatest logistical challenge of Zeus's upbringing was his voice. The crying of an infant god was not a normal sound. It was a resonant, vibrating frequency that could echo across the Mediterranean and alert Kronos to the deception. To solve this, Rhea deployed the Curetes, a fanatical brotherhood of armored warriors. The Curetes stood guard outside the mouth of the Mount Ida cave 24 hours a day. Whenever the infant Zeus began to weep or scream, the Curetes would violently clash their bronze spears, swords, and shields together, dancing in a frenzied, rhythmic war circle. They created a permanent wall of cacophony, drowning out the voice of the hidden god with the artificial din of a battlefield. This environment profoundly shaped Zeus's psychology. He grew up surrounded by the constant metallic rhythm of simulated warfare. He learned that his very existence was a declaration of war against the status quo. He didn't view the Titans as distant rulers. He viewed them as jailers who held his entire family captive inside a fleshy vault. As he reached physical maturity, his veins crackling with the raw, volatile power of the atmosphere, his focus shifted from mere survival to systematic infiltration. He didn't just want to escape the cave, he wanted to tear down the palace. The infiltration and the potion. Zeus knew that a direct military assault on Mount Olympus, the fortress of the Titans, was tactical suicide. He was a single god without an army, facing an established pantheon of massive, battle-hardened elder deities. To break the Titan regime, he had to operate like a scalpel, not a hammer. He needed to strike Kronos from within, turning the tyrant's own anatomy into the first battlefield of the revolution. To execute this, Zeus sought out Metis, a master titaness of wisdom, cunning, and deep cosmic chemistry. Metis possessed the knowledge of cosmic elements that the warlike Titans ignored. She looked at Zeus and saw the perfect instrument to shatter the old order. Together, they formulated a highly volatile emetic potion, a chemical compound made from mustard, wine, and ancient herbs designed to induce violent, unstoppable physical convulsions in an immortal physiology. But the potion was useless unless it could be administered directly to the king. Zeus had to infiltrate the highest tiers of the Titan court. He used his shape-shifting capabilities and a carefully constructed cover identity to present himself at Mount Olympus as a humble, fiercely loyal cupbearer. The Titan court was an environment of decadent, arrogant excess. Kronos sat at the head of the grand banquet hall, surrounded by his siblings, completely detached from the reality of the lower realms. He saw the new cupbearer as just another disposable servant, an insignificant piece of the palace machinery. This was Kronos' fatal error. He had spent centuries looking out into the cosmos for external threats, never realizing that his downfall was currently pouring wine into his golden chalice. The tension of that final evening must have been suffocating. Zeus, standing in the shadow of the man who had devoured his siblings, had to maintain a mask of flawless, deferential calm. He waited for the precise moment when Kronos was deep in his cups, his cognitive defenses lowered by wine and arrogance. Zeus slipped the emetic potion into the king's personal goblet, stepped back into the shadows of the pillars, and watched. The reaction of the potion was instantaneous and horrific. Kronos suddenly dropped his goblet, his massive hands clutching at his throat as his face twisted into a mask of pure agony. The banquet hall fell dead silent as the Titan king fell to his knees, his chest heaving with violent, unnatural spasms. With a deafening, gut-wrenching roar that shook the foundations of Mount Olympus, the internal prison broke. First, Kronos violently regurgitated the Omphalos stone, the heavy rock he had swallowed decades prior. The stone slammed into the polished marble tiles. But the stone was merely the cork in the bottle. Immediately following it, the environment became a scene of visceral, awe-inspiring terror. Out of the mouth of the Titan king emerged 5 fully grown, fully armored, and utterly furious deities. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon stepped on the palace floor. They had spent their entire lives evolving in the dark, their resentment cooking in the stomach of their oppressor. They did not emerge as helpless infants. They emerged as a pre-packaged, battle-ready army, hungry for blood. Zeus stepped out from behind the pillars, casting off his servant's disguise. He stood at the head of his newly liberated siblings, his hand crackling with the first sparks of raw, unchanneled atmospheric power. The family reunion was not of tears or joy. It was a cold, synchronized declaration of war. Kronos looked up from the floor, gasping for air, realizing too late that the prophecy had not been avoided, it had been delivered directly to his table.